Now, though, we're going to shift our attention to something a whole lot more fun than airline problems. We're going to be talking about old classic movies, specifically the 1989 version of Batman starring Michael Keaton. And we've got Joe Fortunato. He is our film school expert, going to take us down the memory trail with the original Batman. Hi, Joe. How you doing?
Good morning, Gene. Good morning, everybody. Yes, we are going to be talking about Batman from 1989, released June 23rd, 1989. And, it's funny because you said the original Batman, and I was going to say the same thing, but, Bat fans out there will know that the original TV show with Adam West actually did have a movie version in 1966. And real Bat fans will know that there was a Batman serial on the big screen in the 40s. So whether we call it original or not, it's certainly the first of the big-budget Batmans to hit the screen back in 1989. And it was a big deal. Directed by Tim Burton, written by Sam Hamm, and starred, as you mentioned, Michael Keaton, as well as Jack Nicholson, Kim Basinger, Billy D. Williams. It won one Oscar for Best Art Direction, and it was a massive hit. It was the highest-grossing movie of 1989, and it was the highest-grossing Warner Brothers movie ever up to that point. And ironically, the record for the Warner Brothers film was Superman from 1978, which we'll talk about in just a second. It was also the highest-grossing film of the whole 1980s that didn't involve Steven Spielberg or George Lucas, so that's saying quite a bit as well. It was sort of the first movie that Hollywood started paying attention to the opening weekend gross. That was not as much a thing as it is today. It grossed $40 million in its opening weekend, which is kind of nothing by today's standards, but that was the biggest opening weekend of all time at the time. And like I said, it sort of started the trend of Hollywood looking at that number as a measure or a metric of success. Tim Burton, the director of the film, sort of credits it with being the first to make a darker comic adaptation of really all superheroes, and acknowledges that that's now pretty incredibly common. I would agree with that. I think this was the first trend towards a darker superhero, because one of the fears of fans, I don't know about fears, I guess that's a pretty accurate statement, was that, they're going to just make another campy version of the 1966 TV show, which I love, by the way. And people were really concerned about that, and it was not that. It was a much darker film. And the casting of Michael Keaton sort of fed into those fears because he was known as a comic actor. And they're saying, oh, my God, if Michael Keaton's going to be Batman, this is going to be, just Batman 66 all over again. That was a big problem for a lot of fans. And there was actually 50,000 protest letters sent to Warner Brothers complaining about the casting of Michael Keaton. That was a big deal. And it turned out, I think Michael Keaton did a very good job, and I think he settled everyone's fears. And now, some decades later, he's looked upon as one of the favorite Batmans. So it all kind of worked out for everybody. In this film, I talked about Superman lineage. This film was really in development for almost 10 years, right after the success of the original Superman film. Warner Brothers wanted to make a Batman film, and so it was being talked about as early as that. In fact, Richard Donner, who was very successful at directing Superman, they kind of wanted him to do it and say, hey, you did great here, let's do Batman as well. And he wanted Mel Gibson to play Batman, which we'll get into casting in a minute, but that's sort of the lineage of how it all came to be.
It was a great movie. I really enjoyed it. I too was a huge fan of the Batman TV show, the Biff Bang Pow. And I was, enamored of all things Batman and Robin. I can't believe that I forgot that there was actually a movie attached to that TV show. But I really loved Michael Keaton in this role. I thought he was fantastic. And really, he's my favorite. I mean, I like him better than Christian Bale.
Oh, me too. I'll just put it out there flat, whether that's nostalgia or not. And I got to admit, I'm less a fan of the darker version of Batman that has sort of been spawned from this movie, and increasingly so with the Christian Bale version. And I know purists will say, well, that's how Batman was, and that was his original intent. I get it. But as someone who was, raised on Adam West, and I like my superheroes a little bit lighter. I like them a little bit more comedic. That's why I like, the Deadpool movies or something where there's snarkiness and there's, I think Marvel does a better job in general of being funnier with their superheroes than DC does. But that's a whole other argument that we probably don't have time to get into. But I do want to talk about casting for a moment. Jack Nicholson, of course, very famous in his role as the Joker. And I think a lot of people already kind of know this, but it's significant because Jack Nicholson received a percentage of the gross of the film rather than his regular flat fee. And he was so convinced that it was going to be a hit, he took that gross, and that eventually led to him taking home about $60 million as a salary on that film, which would be adjusted for inflation, almost 150,000, or almost 150 million. Let me say that in today's dollars. And so, he really became one of the highest grossing or highest paid actors ever for that role. He wasn't originally going to play the role. They originally offered it to Robin Williams because let me rephrase that. Jack Nicholson hesitated and said, no, I don't know if I want to do this. And then they offered it to Robin Williams. So Robin Williams accepted the role, and then producers came to Nicholson again and told him that Williams was going to do it, and Nicholson changed his mind, and Robin Williams was released. Robin Williams was so angry at being used as bait like that that he refused to play the Riddler in Batman Forever, which he would have been great at, but he refused to work with Warner Brothers in any way until the studio apologized, and it was almost a decade later before he did something with Warner Brothers. So don't mess with Robin Williams in that regard.
Wow.
Michelle Pfeiffer,
I didn't know that story.
Michelle Pfeiffer was dating Michael Keaton at the time of Batman's production and was asked to play Vicky Vale, but Keaton didn't want that. He says it's going to be awkward. Well, of course, Michelle Pfeiffer would play alongside Michael Keaton as Catwoman in the sequel, Batman Returns, but their relationship had ended at that point, so I guess it was okay.
All right. So very good. Anything more you'd like to add before we wrap up on this?
Well, one little fun thing is the famous "I'm Batman" line wasn't scripted. That was made up by Michael Keaton sort of on the spot. Tim Burton didn't like the Prince song. You remember Prince did some of the songs on the soundtrack. That was producer John Peters' idea. And I talked originally about this sort of leading to the darker side of comic books. And in more recent interviews, Tim Burton says, it's kind of funny because everyone said, oh, this is too dark, it's too dark, it's too dark. Now, decades later, it's almost light and comic compared to some of the versions of Batman we've seen on screen or on animated versions and whatnot.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, I really loved this version of Batman, and thanks for bringing it back to mind. And maybe people will go out and rent this weekend or watch it on streaming. I'm not sure if it's streaming at all right now, but certainly a great version of it. Batman 1989 with Michael Keaton, and that's Joe Fortunato, our film school expert, and he'll be back next Friday with us again on 93.
I do want to remind everybody that we're a week away from Fortunato Film School live at Jilly's Music Room next Saturday, July 27th. We're going to be screening Jaws, and the tickets are going fast, so be sure to, we've been talking about it, and I know they're going to be talking about it on the air this week, but just another brief reminder that get your tickets now so you can reserve your space, and it's at Jilly's Music Room. That's going to be next Saturday, July 27th. The doors open at 11 a.m. You can get a great brunch. We'll start the film at 12 noon, and it's going to be a wonderful time, so don't miss that.
That sounds great. Joe Fortunato on 93.5, 1590 WAKR.